بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على المبعوث رحمة للعالمين وعلى آله وصحبه ومن استنى بسنته إلى يوم الدين، وبعد. قال الله تبارك وتعالى في كتابه العزيز بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم، بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم: والمؤمنون والمؤمنات بعضهم أولياء بعض. صدق الله العلي العظيم. وقال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم: المؤمن مرآة المؤمن، أو كما قال عليه الصلاة والسلام. Honorable brethren, respected sister in Islam, we as humans are a creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala which thrive off of being social. There are some from amongst us, although very seldom found, who prefer solitude, and there's nothing wrong with that so long as it's for the right reasons. But we generally thrive off of being around one another. And this companionship of ours and affiliation of ours with other people can make or break us. Like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about individuals of hypocrisy and disbelief, they encourage one another, motivate one another to be better in the hypocrisy and disbelief. المنافقون والمنافقات بعضهم أولياء بعض. Right? The hypocrites and the female hypocrites and the male hypocrites, all of them, they are helpers to one another. They commend each other for evil and vice and transgression. And just like that, believers, وَالْمُؤْمِنُونَ وَالْمُؤْمِنَاتِ بَعْضُهُمْ أَوْلِيَاءُ بَعْضٍ. We are helpers to one another. We command goodness and forbid from evil. We bring each other up and stay away from tearing each other down. We make each other better, or that's what we're supposed to be doing at least. You know what, subhanAllah, one of the ways to make one another better that the Prophet ﷺ advised is through advice, al-nasiha. There's so many hadith of the Prophet ﷺ which allude towards this and say it directly. A lot of verses of the Quran, وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. And there's so many verses of the Quran which allude towards this as well. And so many concepts in our religious literature which say that that should be the standard of how we are to one another, by advising one another. But when it comes to advice, advice is something that is it's a very delicate matter. Advice too, if it's done in the wrong way, can destroy a person. Even if the intentions behind the advice were absolutely noble. Advice on a personal note is very different than advice given here from the pulpit, for example. From the pulpit, I, with my responsibility towards you, have or should have the commitment that I will relay the religion of Allah to you without any filter, without holding back. In a good way, but without holding back. So sometimes it may get a little tough, sometimes it may get a little harsh, sometimes you feel like, man, this guy is really just attacking or bashing. But that's the nature of the khutbah. The Prophet ﷺ was rahmatun lil alameen, mercy to all the worlds. Whether it was human beings, jinn kind, animals, trees, plants, everybody or everything got a glimpse and a great portion at times of the mercy of the Prophet ﷺ. But as merciful of a human being as he was very balanced. To give you an example, how was the Prophet ﷺ like when it came to a personal or an individual basis, advising people in person? The Prophet ﷺ didn't advise the man who was peeing in the masjid right away because he felt like that might hurt him. Because that was him connecting with him on a personal basis. That was different. The Sahaba wanted to implement the law of Allah by telling that what you're doing is wrong and stopping him dead in his tracks. But the Prophet ﷺ forbade that, and he told him very nicely afterwards, after he had done doing the wrong that he did, he advised him very, very nicely. But when it came to the khutbah, the way the companions of the Prophet ﷺ described the khutbah of the Prophet ﷺ was very different to how he was on a personal level. The Prophet ﷺ was described by his very noble and very beloved companion, Jabir ibn Abdullah radiallahu anhu. This is reported by Imam Muslim in his compilation of authentic hadith, where he describes the sermon of the Prophet ﷺ as being very intense. He would say, احمضت عيناه وعلى صوته واشتد غضبه حتى كأنه منذر جيش. The Prophet ﷺ's eyes would turn red. His voice would get extremely loud. It seemed as if his anger was intensifying. Because obviously when the laws of Allah are broken, that is one of the reasons for somebody to get angry. As one of the justified things to make a person justifiably angry. It seemed like his anger was intensifying. And it seemed like he was warning an army, because he was warning the people in general. It was general advice for everybody. He wasn't dealing with one specific person. He was generally advising the group, and that advice was very, very, very intense. And the Prophet ﷺ, it seemed like he was warning an army. How do you warn an army? My dear respected friends, there's an enemy here to attack us. Kindly put yourself with arms. Would you warn an army like that? No. He's like, move, get ready. We're about to get attacked. This is your only chance to save your life. Oh, you go all out. And what is he warning them against? He's warning them against ruining their eternal life, which is the hereafter, and sacrificing something very meager in lieu of that, which is the temporary life of this world. The Prophet ﷺ was warning them against such foolishness. That's why the Prophet ﷺ was very intense when it came to advice from the pulpit versus when he was with someone. When he was alone with someone, when he was advising someone on a personal note, even when he was talking to a group of companions of his, he would be very kind, very gentle, use examples, resonate with them, trying to understand where this disbelief and where this disobedience of Allah is coming from, trying to get in their minds, trying to understand them better. He would do that on a personal note. And that's who we are to each other. Advisors on a personal note. Which is why the khutbah of today is focused on just one hadith. Just going down and opening up one hadith. And that is the Prophet ﷺ's very famous and very, very beautiful statement. Al-mu'minu mir'atul mu'min. That a believer is a mirror for another believer. Very profound statement. You know, and the scholars of hadith unpack this hadith very, very beautifully. Like how is a believer a mirror to another believer? Like, what is this example even supposed to mean? It seems like a very simple and easy example. Like, whatever you see in the mirror, that's what you're supposed to tell people. But subhanAllah, the way the Prophet ﷺ chose something so simple, it's one of the miracles of our religion. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Prophet ﷺ use very simple examples to talk about very, very complex things, to talk about very meaningful things. You know, a lot of people think that, hey, this is very simple. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala states, إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يَسْتَحْيِي أَنْ يَضْرِبَ مَثَلًا مَا بَعُوضَةً فَمَا فَوْقَهَا فَأَمَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا فَيَعْلَمُونَ أَنَّهُ الْحَقُّ مِنْ رَبِّهِمْ وَأَمَّا الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا فَيَقُولُونَ مَاذَا أَرَادَ اللَّهُ بِهَذَا مَثَلًا يُضِلُّ بِهِ كَثِيرًا وَيَهْدِي بِهِ كَثِيرًا وَمَا يُضِلُّ بِهِ إِلَّا الْفَاسِقِينَ. Allah talks about these examples and parables, and He says that Allah is not shy of using very simple examples. He'll use a mosquito if He has to. Those people who believe in Allah and those people who have been inspired with goodness will say this truth from our Lord. Those people who have been inspired with deviance and absolutely unyielding and unfinishing disobedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will say, what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mean with these examples? What is the Prophet ﷺ talking about with these examples? No, Allah says these examples and this Quran and this Sunnah can be a means of guidance for many and a means of misguidance for many. And those people who have the open desire to openly disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this very Quran will be a source of misguidance for you. Alright, so subhanAllah, Allah talks about these examples. So how beautiful is this example where the Prophet ﷺ says, you are a mirror for your believer. When we look into the interpretation and the elucidation of what this actually means, the scholars have written a few things, precisely 7 things. The first of them being that إِنَّ الْمُؤْمِنَ يُرِي أَخَاهُ عُيُوبَهُ الَّتِي لَا يُمْكِنُ يَرَاهَا مِنْ نَفْسِهِ كَمَا أَنَّ الْأَعْضَاءَ فِي الْجَسَدِ وَالْعُيُوبَ فِي الْبَدَنِ لَا يُمْكِنُ رُؤْيَتُهَا إِلَّا بِالنُّؤَى. That a believer shows his believing brother, or even if it's a sister, their faults and their flaws, the ones that they are not capable of seeing themselves, just like a mirror divulges unto you all of the things, all of the parts of your body and all of your flaws that you're not able to see all by yourself. So firstly, the reason why we are mirrors to one another is so that we can see in one another that which we can't see in ourselves. And that's the first thing. We have to understand that we can't be offended by advice when someone tells us something about us that we don't expect to hear about ourselves. If we don't expect to hear something and someone else is telling us, that's because they can see what we can't see. We should learn as a community to not be offended by advice. You know, the prophets, my teacher, may Allah have mercy on him, will give a very beautiful example. It's not really that beautiful. It's actually a little humorous. He says that you can go into the restroom, answer the call of nature, defecate to your heart's content, and that stench will be obnoxious. It will be really overwhelming. But you can sit in there for hours. You can sit there for half an hour and just defecate, and no one ever walks out on themselves in the bathroom saying that I can't handle the smell, man. But the moment the next gentleman comes along, and subhanAllah, you have to go after that person, then you start complaining, man, what's wrong with this ventilation? What's wrong with this person's bladder? And so the moment it's not you, you'll start noticing. And that's the nature of people. We have to understand that we shouldn't be offended by advice, especially just because someone else can notice it better than us. We don't notice our own flaws. We're used to not seeing wrong within us. We like to pacify ourselves, which is why we need to understand that advice from other people and a fresh perspective is something that is needed. Prophet ﷺ one time was sitting with the companions and somebody farted really loud, right? And the Prophet ﷺ was encountered by a whole bunch of Sahaba laughing. They were laughing, they're human beings, they just started laughing. The Prophet ﷺ said, come on guys, why are you laughing? Why are you laughing at something that you do yourself? And it's just, subhanAllah, we have to learn to not be offended and that we need advice from people. That's what a mirror does. It shows you things about yourself that you can't see yourself. And the next thing is, إِنَّ الْمِرْآةَ الصَّادِقَةُ يُرِيكَ حَسَنَاتُكَ وَيَشْكُرُكَ عَلَيْهَا وَيُرِيكَ سَيِّئَاتِكَ وَيُنَبِّهُكَ عَلَيْهَا. That a mirror is truthful, it's candid, it's raw. It shows you your strengths and subhanAllah, it compliments you. You feel good about yourself. And it also shows you your flaws and tells you about them so that you can be wary. So just like a mirror tells you these things candidly, like subhanAllah, if you look in the mirror and like, man, you got some biceps, you got a nice six-pack, you got a beautiful body, but then, you know, subhanAllah, the department up here is lacking a little bit. I'm not saying that's a demerit, but subhanAllah, Father Time has a very cool sense of humor. Right? SubhanAllah, when that happens, it will show you that beautiful body of yours, but it won't compromise on your head. It will show you that too. So it's very raw and very candid. So how are we to one another, or how should we be to one another? Very raw and candid, by showing you both the good and the bad. And the next thing is that يُرِيهِ كَمَا هِيَ بِلَا تَأْوِيلٍ وَلَا تَخْفِيفٍ. A mirror shows you your flaws without exaggeration, without emphasis, without elucidation, without expounding on the flaw. It will show you just like it is. It will show you your strength just like it is. It's very truthful. It's very raw and very candid. So that's exactly how believers are supposed to be to one another. Very candid. A lot of times when we like somebody, we like to elevate them beyond measure. We like to talk about them in such glowing and high terms that we don't even talk about the prophets with. We like to talk about some of our celebrity idols like, subhanAllah, like they are the best human being on the face of this planet. We like to talk about some people with such elevated and lofty ranks of praise that praise gets to their head and it causes them to self-destruct. But when we go like somebody, we'll take a little molehill of a mistake and make a huge mountain of flaw out of it. We'll take a little error of theirs, a little glitch in their behavior. It might even be out of their personal character, and we will expound on that and exaggerate. A mirror doesn't do that. It shows you exactly who you are, what your strengths are, what your flaws are, just so you can look at it and learn from it. Very truthful, very raw, very candid. Another thing that it does is it shows you بالصمت. إن المرآة الصامتة يعلمك بالصمت. It shows you your raw and candid image with your strengths and your weaknesses with silence. It doesn't announce it to the world. If you're looking at it, only you're looking at it. You can choose to look at it in private, you can choose to look at it in personal. Do people usually go and check themselves out in the mirror in public? No. They usually go in the bathroom. They usually go in a private area. And whoever it is reflecting, that is the only individual who gets to see. Very quiet. It doesn't start yelling or screaming or shouting. It's advices. It doesn't start, and then that leads to the very next one, and that is إِذَا ابْتَعَدْتَ عَنِ الْمَرْآةِ زَالَتْ صُورَةٌ. When you move far away from the mirror, then you're not there anymore. فَهَكَذَا أَخُوكَ الْمُؤْمِنِ إِذَا ابْتَعَدْتَ عَنْهُ كَتَمَ سِرًّا. Just like that should be your beloved Muslim brother or sister. When you move far away from them and they're done advising you, then they keep your secrets. They keep your inner matters, or they keep that advice that they give you clandestine. They don't divulge into your secrets. SubhanAllah, Imam Shafi'i rahimahullah says very beautifully, مَنْ نَصَحَ أَخَاهُ سِرًّا فَقَدْ نَصَحَهُ وَزَانَهُ. That individual who advises his believing brother or sister in private, quietly, without exposing him, he has indeed advised him and beautified him and adorned him or her. وَمَنْ نَصَحَ or وَعَظَ أَخَاهُ عَلَانِيَةً فَقَدْ فَضَحَهُ وَخَانَهُ. And that individual who divulges, who in publicly advises, with the excuse of Adeen al-Nasiha, brother, religion is advice, brother, and he goes on trying to advise him in public, then that is not advice. He says he has betrayed him and humiliated him. That is a betrayal of the right of a believer, advising in public. SubhanAllah, he also says, I can't remember the exact poem, where he says something along the lines of, I don't want your advice if it's in a public setting. If you're talking directly to me, speak directly to me behind closed doors. And that's exactly what the mirror does. It doesn't, when the next person shows up in the mirror, it doesn't be like, you're here, man. Oh, guy, he was ugly, because thank God you're here. No, it doesn't do any of that. SubhanAllah, it shows the person, and it doesn't talk about the person. As soon as that person points. You know, SubhanAllah, all of these wonderful advices, like how are we to implement these? You know, another, which leads to the next point, and that next point is that the next point is that SubhanAllah, it is من أهم أسباب الزينة فلا يكاد يتم التزيين إلا بها. It is from amongst the most important, most integral parts or tools of beautifying and adorning oneself. To an extent where beautification is not even possible without a mirror. And SubhanAllah, just like that, believers to one another, it's not possible for you to completely adorn yourself all by yourself without having someone to watch your back, without having someone to correct you when you're wrong. A lot of times we just love when everyone just says nice things about us. But when somebody says something wrong, and even if it's true, we just get upset. We're very sensitive. We need to let go of being so sensitive and our feelings being hurt over the truth. You know, SubhanAllah, when we are advising one another, understand that that is our right to one another. And SubhanAllah, the scholars describe a few ways. I'm just going to mention two of them because time is running out, of how we can do this. Firstly is through musahaba, finding good companionship, finding somebody who will, whose company is just so beautiful that you'll just be inspired by for nobility with just being around them. For example, there was one scholar that passed, his name is Muhammad bin Wasi' rahimahullah. The scholars of that time used to say that whenever we would go around him, just his company would be so blissful that we'd just be inspired to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by just gazing at him. So pick company or select company that will inspire you to do good, and stay away from company that will, it will make you want to mess up. And the next thing is mu'akhat. Mu'akhat was something that the people of the past would do. They would pair up with one another. They would identify with one another on a brotherly level and say that you might not be my real brother, but I am authorizing you to advise me whenever you really see that I'm tripping. If I'm ever tripping, you come and call me out. And SubhanAllah, and then I will do the same for you. Identify with someone that is a practical way of getting, someone that you trust, someone that knows what they're talking about, not just anyone. A lot of times we only look for advice from people who we know are going to give us fun advice. People who we know are going to give us advice that's cool, that's easy to do. No. Look for somebody who will be really honest with you, raw and candid with you. Somebody who wants your goodness in this life and the next life. And SubhanAllah, look for such people and then try. And then once we start implementing these, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will inspire a wa'id in our heart too. An advisor, a spiritual distress signal in our heart too. Right? And SubhanAllah, that's what the Prophet says, إِذَا أَرَادَ اللَّهُ بِعَبْدٍ خَيْرًا جَعْلَ لَهُ وَاعِظًا فِي قَلْبِهِ أَمَرَهُ وَيَنْهَاهُ. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala really wants goodness for someone, then after all these methods of receiving advice, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will send distress signals for whenever someone does something wrong, they'll be able to identify all on their own that I messed up. Like for example, Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anhu was one of these very, very fortunate individuals. And he, for example, one time was just walking, he accidentally nudged someone. And then he was in a hurry, so he just hurried on, did what he had to do. And when he went back home, he started reflecting, he's like, man, I probably hurt him, or I probably, offended him by just nudging him like that. And he couldn't find the brother, so he kept looking for him for an entire year. And when he finally found him, he found out that his brother was going to Hajj. So he invited him to his home, and while he was in his house, he went inside and he grabbed a bag which contained 600 dirhams. It's a lot of money. And he gave it to him, and he's like, look, this is for you. Use it in your Hajj. And I just want to clarify why I'm giving this to you. And the reason is because a year ago, I pushed you by accident, and I didn't mean to do that. And I wanted to clear it up. And I've been feeling bad about it all this time. Now, that brother was like, man, I didn't even notice you pushed me, and secondly, I don't even recall. But he said, I haven't slept for one single night ever since I've been back. So once we start accepting advice, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will get us to a level where Allah will send distress signals when we do something wrong. Right? And then one thing that I would like to close off with is the last point of advice, and that is that إن المرأة يريك الظاهر فلا سبيل لها على الباطن فهكذا أخوك المؤمن يعامل مع أخاه سرا وفي ظاهره ولا يطعن في باطنه, which means that a believer is just like the mirror. When that mirror advises you or shows you your flaws, and it only shows you your external flaws. It doesn't delve into your heart and tries to dissect why you're doing this or what's in your heart. And that's exactly how we are supposed to be with one another. Don't try to judge. Don't try to become an x-ray. The Prophet ﷺ asked us to become a mirror, not an x-ray. SubhanAllah, we always try to look for, this person has an agenda, this person has it. No, if you see something wrong happening right in front of you, that's it. Address that and move on. You don't need to dissect why it's happening or what the person is evil or the person has vice in their heart. No, none of that. Just the external. Al-Batin, whatever is internal, only belongs for Allah alone to judge. We are advisors, not judges. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give me all this ability to implement what we're